Hi everyone. Welcome you all to my talk, Break Silos, Build Chapters. My name is Ashok, and I'm an engineering leader with TransUnion, which is a credit bureau, and pretty much we run credit bureaus across the world in multiple different countries. Specific to testing, I've been associated with the testing domain for close to 2 decades now, and my area of focus within testing is around test strategy, leadership, automation, test data, customer advocacy. And in the next couple of minutes, I will be taking you through my journey of setting up chapters and what problems we faced when we initially transitioned from a waterfall way of working to an agile model, problems specific to the structure of the agile teams, and how chapters helped us to overcome those problems. I'll also talk about a few of the tips that has worked well for us in managing and running these chapters as well on an ongoing basis. When we initially started off 4 years back in our transformation journey from a typical waterfall way of working into an agile model of working, along with transforming the way of working itself in terms of processes, in terms of tools, and in terms of people mindset and all that. The other major transformation that the teams went through is the transformation of the structure of their teams itself. So from waterfall, we were structured and organized in a format. And when we started moving into agile, throughout that transformation journey, we tried out with multiple different agile team structures. So when we initially started off, we were a fairly nascent team, fairly immature agile team. So we wanted a dedicated agile coach to be with the teams, hand-holding the teams, trying to teach them, coach them on the agile processes, and basically hand-holding the team into that agile world. And slowly, once we settled into this agile way of working, we started trying out a different structure of the team itself. So what we thought was, let's create micro teams, micro agile teams, which are actually specialist teams. So for example, we had a specialist testing team, we had a specialist development team, we had a specialist release engineering team. While this is not truly agile, we were in the initial stages of our transformation, so this was okay for us. This was working well for us because it was more inclined to the waterfall way of working, which we were comfortable with. But we still had our agile ceremonies and processes and all of that. But we were not truly agile in that spirit. The one advantage or merit that we saw in this sort of a specialist structure is that all of the tools and frameworks that we needed for delivering our specialist skills was confined to that specialist team only. So the testing processes, the testing tools, the testing frameworks were all consistently managed and maintained within the testing specialist stream. And similarly for the development and the release engineering teams as well. Now, the challenge here was we were not truly agile, we were not cross-functional, and there was a lot of handover that needed to be done between the teams for development to pass to testing, for testing to now transfer to release engineering and all of that. And we noticed that this way of working was actually not agile, but we called it agile, but we were in the true spirit waterfall. Now from there, we moved on and we tried out another type of team structure whereby we created a umbrella agile team, which is called the parent agile team. And under this umbrella agile team, we had multiple sub teams, and each of these sub teams again is a specialist team. So we had a sub team for development, we had a sub team for testing skill, we had a sub team for release management skills. What this gave us was a sense of cross functionality, but we were not again truly cross functional. What it also gave us was, to a certain extent, the processes and the frameworks within each of the skill groups remain consistent in this structure as well. but we were still not truly being an agile team structure. And as the transformation continued, we now wanted to experiment with a so-called real agile structure of a team. So we tried out with a generalist team structure. By generalist team structure, what we meant was we pulled in all of the different skill set into the same cross-functional team. So we had a single agile team, which encompassed people from testing, development, release engineering, all working together, all trying to teach each other their own skills and being truly cross-functional. Now, we had huge benefits in terms of the ability to push stories out of our way much faster, deliver stories into production much faster, because all of the skills that were required to deliver a particular piece of work into production is available in a single team. And there was very less handover from one type of skill into another skill. So it was all a cross-functional team. People were all aligned to each other, at least in letter, not in spirit. Now, the challenge that we noticed with this generalist kind of a team structure is that while we were a lot more efficient within the generalist structure, outside of the generalist structure, outside of the agile team and between the agile teams, we lacked collaboration. So there was a silo that was created within each of these teams. Now, the problem with that silo is all of the practices, all of the best practices, all of the frameworks, processes were a lot more inconsistent now within the teams. And the final model that we evolved into was a distributed multi-vendor team. Now, this distributed multi-vendor structure was put together based on various financial constraints that were on the organization. We had to bring in people from different vendors into the agile enterprise itself. So we had specific skills from specific vendor companies, but they were all under one agile team's umbrella. Now, the challenge that this sort of a structure brought in was that while this was also cross-functional, we were a complete mess in terms of what kind of processes and best practices that needed to be followed in the teams. And because each of these vendor skilled people, right, they had their own perspective of best practices, tools, and processes which they want to promote and advocate within the distributed multi-vendor agile gamut. And we were struggling to standardize these processes and tools because they were from different people from different companies. Now, most of the challenges that I noticed in all of these structures is pretty much the same, and it is not specific to any one structure, or it is not unique to any one structure. The key challenge with all of these structures is that we were stuck in a silo. We were stuck in agile silos that were working very well internally, but not working cross-functionally. And because there was all of these silos, there was a lack of standardization in the best practices within the teams. For instance, an agile team A might want to implement a test data management process. Now they went ahead and chose the best test data management process. They built. Now another agile team within the same enterprise would also expect a similar kind of test data management requirement, or they also had the same problem. But the challenge here is they didn't know that their problem was a shared problem. So they thought that they only had that problem, and now they wanted to solve that problem. They went ahead and built their own test data management solutions. Now there exist two test data management solutions within the same agile enterprise, but between two different teams. This resulted in a lot of duplication of processes and tools itself. So, and we spent a lot of money building or buying new tools when there were existing tools already available or already being utilized in other teams. And because of all of these different processes and tools that existed in the teams, there was no consistency in execution of the project itself. So because the kind of practices that were followed or implemented in different teams was completely different. So we were not able to consistently deliver across the teams because let's say that one team had a test data management process and they had very good automation in place to create this data, and another team did not have this sort of advanced TDM process and automation built on top of it. Now, this team that did not have it will eventually start creating the data manually, and this will result in a lot of inconsistencies in the test results even. And the test results for the team which already has this process in place is much more consistent. So overall, on the whole, on the agile enterprise itself, there was an inconsistency. And the other challenge that I noticed throughout our journey from waterfall into agile was typically in a waterfall model, all of our people were specialist skills. Now, we had a specialist in development skill set, we had specialist testers, we had specialist people capable of release engineering and all of that. Now, when we transformed or when we were trying to transform into an agile way of working, we forced these specialist skill sets into becoming more generalist. And the outcome of this problem is that we lost the value that specialists will be capable of providing an agile team or a team itself. There are specific benefits that you get out of specialist skills, and when you try and straitjacket those specialist people into more generic skill sets, you lose the value that you earlier had received through that specialization. Now, to overcome all of these challenges, what we thought was building a chapter is a good solution to it. And this is not some kind of an idea that we invented or we created. It's been there since the time of Linus Torvalds, when he created a community to build Linux. And the chapter is basically an amalgamation of similar skilled people. So you can bring in people with similar skills and people with similar passion into a chapter. And the beauty of a chapter is that it gives you the opportunity to look at a problem and realize that that problem is a shared problem, and try and build a solution that will solve this problem for many different teams. And this sort of a visibility was not there with us when we were not having these chapters. And I've also seen the terminologies being interchangeably used between chapters and community of practice. And I've seen both of them to coexist in different organizations. Certain parts of the world, they term it as community of practice, and certain parts of the world, they call it chapters. But in general, it is an amalgamation of similar skilled people. And in our specific case, we initially experimented with a testing chapter. We built a testing chapter. But what we tried to do differently is that we called it as a cohort of people who were passionate about quality. They need not be only testers who were part of that chapter. Now, our testing chapter had people from development background who were passionate about building quality into their software. We had release engineering people who were passionate about releasing quality software into production. So it is basically a cohort of similarly passionate people. And what this chapter gave us was it enabled us a pathway into standardization of our processes, tools, and techniques. Because a chapter is in our case, it's a community where the best practices are discussed, and the best practices are again then implemented or pollinated across the different agile teams. And chapter leader is a very critical role that we had in our chapters, and the role of the chapter leader is basically a servant leader role, and he's responsible for managing and driving the chapter initiatives itself. Now, having discussed about what a chapter is and what were the problems that we had in our agile team structures when we transformed from waterfall into agile, I also thought of explaining more about the chapter concept using my favorite Marvel characters. Now, the left side of the screen, you will see the Marvel characters, and each of them represents a skill set or represent a skill that particular character is passionate about. Now, in this case, the Spider-Man represents exploratory testers. Avengers will represent the non-functional testers, and the Hulk is the front-end developer. Now, each of these superheroes or Marvel characters, vertically, they form the they basically work in a cross-functional agile team on the vertical side. Whereas on the horizontal side, they are part of a chapter. And these chapters can be generic chapters, which are chapters for, in a testing perspective, it can be a chapter for quality engineering itself, and which provides holistic solutions for quality engineering problems. It can also be a specialist chapter like the Avengers chapter, wherein they are specifically working on or interested in specific areas within quality engineering. In this case, it can be a performance engineering chapter. And this chapter of Avengers, which provides performance engineering solutions or performance testing solutions to the overall agile enterprise. The other type of chapter is the internal chapter. So if you see the Hulk chapter on the top of the picture, that's the internal chapter. By internal chapter, I mean chapters that are created with all of the chapter members being from the same organization itself. So an advantage of this sort of an internal chapter is that the amount of information that can be shared within this chapter is a lot more than external chapters, because you don't have the constraints of data privacy or information sharing. In contrast to this, the external chapter is a chapter that is created with people from across different organizations itself. The advantage of that kind of an external chapter is that you get diversified solutions to a shared problem that might exist for different organizations. And while there is also an advantage, there is also a disadvantage of how much information you can share in an external chapter. And obviously, because there are multiple organizations involved, there might be restrictions in the amount of information that can be transferred or shared within the chapter members itself. So now that we have spoken about our Marvel chapter, what I also wanted to discuss today is our chapter journey and the problems that we faced when we started implementing or running these chapters, and how did we go about solving them. Now, when we initially created chapters, what we noticed was these chapters are loosely organized. They don't have that formal agile teams structure. And anything that is loosely organized tends to not also get the required priority and visibility within the organization. And our chapters also were in that state, and they were often sidelined. So what we went about doing is that we started evangelizing this chapter concept with the management stakeholders. And we ensured that we got the right intensity of management air cover, because that will help us to get the right visibility and priority that we needed to ensure that we are able to successfully run our chapters. Now, once we got that management air cover, and once we were able to establish a chapter, The other challenge that we noticed was within the chapter itself, the people who were part of that chapter, they lacked the motivation to actually work on chapter tasks, because again, they were also part of a formal agile team, and they were delivering stories into production. They were delivering customer centric stories that added value directly to the customer, to the as part of their agile team. So that work was much more of priority to them and much more rewarding to them rather than working on chapter tasks. Now, to overcome that problem, what we went ahead is that we started injecting gamification strategies into running our chapters. So our chapter leaders basically uh, award points to the chapter members based on their ability to complete certain chapter tasks. And as the points get accrued, the chapter members can also gain badges. And we created a leaderboard with these points and badges. And this sort of a leaderboard is published and it is made visible in the office location. So everyone is aware about what points each of the chapter members have accrued and what badges that they've got. And chapter members with the highest number of badges are also felicitated in the PI planning days, so that these are all motivation techniques that helped us to motivate our chapter members to work on chapter task and deliver value for the chapter itself. Now, the other problem that we faced when we started running chapters is the time for working on chapter tasks. So since our product owners were focused on getting customer stories implemented, we noticed that the teams were never given the time that is required for them to actually work on chapter deliverables. Now, to overcome this problem, we went ahead and coined this term called chapter time, which is the time that each chapter member is allocated to work on chapter tasks. And the split up that has worked well for us is 80-20, which means that 80% of a chapter member or a team member's time is assigned to the agile team to work on sprint deliverables, whereas 20% of the time is allocated specifically for chapters. And we also made sure that we made this public, made this visible in our sprint planning and PI planning discussions. Why we made sure that everyone is aware and everyone is made aware of this sort of a split is that we wanted alignment with all of our agile stakeholders, because ultimately they are the ones who push the team to deliver 100% of their time, which is not practical even. Another key metric that has worked well for us is a metric that we call as happiness index. So every chapter member is asked to provide his happiness index, which is an arbitrary score of 1 to 4, 1 being least happy and or 1 to 5, 1 being least happy and 5 being most happiest. And this sort of a happiness score is collected from each chapter member as part of the chapter retro. And the chapter leaders are responsible and accountable for ensuring that their chapters have the highest happiness index. And we built this happiness score because we realize that chapters is basically a community activity, and to ensure that the team members are aligned and they understand the value that they're delivering, they needed to be happy. And we also noticed that a happier chapter was capable of delivering greater value to the chapter itself. So that's about it on the chapter story. Thanks very much for listening in.